When I was a kid, one of the first card games I ever played was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. My very first deck was the original Yu-Gi starter deck. The Dark Magician became one of my favorite cards of all time, and yet, for the longest time, I was really disappointed that it never could be part of a competitive deck of its own. Well, in recent times, some of the older iconic monsters of the game have been given new light with some much needed support. The classic Blue Eyes White Dragon, the Red Eyes Black Dragon, and of course, the Dark Magician. While it isn't by any means a top tier deck, the Dark Magician deck we'll be looking at in this video is a fun deck that can keep up with some of the modern day competitive decks. Don't forget that if you enjoyed this video to hit that like button. Let's start with our monster cards. We run 3 copies of the Dark Magician. This is the iconic card of the deck, so with the recursion and the search abilities in this deck, we will want to run as many as we can run. 2 copies of Dark Magician Girl. I realize that many people who run Dark Magicians don't really run her in the deck due to her inability to be special summoned, but I run 2 for the sake of flavor and for her fusion, which we'll be getting to later on. 2 copies of Palladium Oracle Mahad. This card is great to draw into to get that free special summon. Its ability to double its attack while battling a dark attribute is pretty nifty, and its destruction will let us get a Dark Magician into play, thereby replacing itself on the field. A single copy of Magician of Dark Illusion. I really like this card for its flexibility and utility in being a makeshift Dark Magician, and its ability to special summon one from the graveyard. 1 copy of Dark Magician of Chaos. It made me really happy to see this card made it completely off the ban list, although with a slight change in its errata. This is one of my favorite of the retrained series of monsters, and it has a very powerful card to have sweep any opponent's monster destroyed by it to the banished zone. As you might have noticed, we do run a lot of high level monsters, but we can special summon most of them. This is for the sake of running the single copy of Sorcerer of Dark Magic, who can be special summoned by tributing 2 of our level 6 or higher spellcasters. He could shut down traps immediately, so say no to Mirror Force. It doesn't work on counter traps, however, due to the spell speed 3 of counter traps. Coming up next, we have 3 copies of Chocolate Magician Girl. She has a really great filter ability, letting us ditch a spellcaster in order to draw a card. She also can bring back a spellcaster monster into the graveyard, shift an attack from her to the revived monster, having the attacking monster's attack. This makes her a very serious threat that your opponent usually won't want to attack into, given the risk of the spellcaster in the grave. 2 copies each of Magician's Robe and Magician's Rod. The Robe is great at getting a spell or trap we need when we need it. It also has the ability to return itself to your hand, which is a trick that I don't tend to use too often. The Robe lets us special summon a Dark Magician in a pinch on your opponent's turn, and it can special summon itself from the graveyard when you activate a spell or trap card. Our last monsters are a pair of Summoner Monk for those quick rank 4 summons, as well as fetching our Magician Girls. Now let's talk about spells and traps. We run a good amount of spells in this build, obviously being spellcasters. 3 copies of Dark Magical Circle are pretty expensive, but they're definitely worth it. You get to peek through your next 3 draws and potentially add one of them for your hand. In addition to that, we can banish a card once per turn whenever a Dark Magician is summoned, making super good value of that spell. 2 copies of Eye of Timaeus to get out our fusions, the ones we run specifically we'll get to in just a moment. 1 Dark Burning Magic, a neat little trick I wanted to test out in running Dark Magician Girl alongside of Dark Magician. It's always nice to blow up your opponent's entire field, so. A copy of Dedication Through Light and Darkness to trade in a Dark Magician for the Dark Magician of Chaos when we need it. It's a quick play, so we can do this even after attacking. Dark Magical Attack to clear out an opponent's back row. It's Harpy's Feather Duster for Dark Magician. We gotta run it. 2 copies of Dark Magic Expanded is a nice modal spell I like, as we can quickly and easily reach that 3 Dark Spellcaster requirement. 2 Allure of Darkness for some nice card draw. I don't like that it might result in me banishing a Dark Magician or something that I need, but most of the time I have something else I can banish. 2 Illusion Magic to tutor for a pair of Dark Magicians from either the deck or the graveyard, and a copy of Instant Fusion to cheat out some of those fusion monsters. This is good for one of the tricks this deck does, which we'll be getting to when we discuss the extra deck. Soul Charge for Graveyard Recursion, a copy of Upstart Goblin for some card draw. The 1,000 points your opponent gains is negligible. We run 4 traps at the moment. 2 copies of Eternal Soul for the sheer power it offers. We could special summon a Dark Magician or tutor for a Dark Magic attack since we don't run 1,000 Knives. You can if you want to. a copy of Magician Navigation to get us out those high-level spellcasters, along with a Dark Magician. It can also be used to shut off an opponent's spell or trap for a turn. And then last but not least, a copy of Solemn Strike for some monster negation. Now let's talk about the extra deck. A copy of the Thousand Eyes Restrict, which is a card that recently came off the ban list after ages of sitting on it. This is one of the first fusion monsters I'd ever gotten, and it's one of my favorites. You use instant fusion to special summon it, you steal your opponent's biggest monster, and at the end of the turn, their monster gets to be destroyed along with your Thousand Eyes Restrict. Think of it as a long-about way to remove a threat. 2 Amulet Dragon for a big beatstick endgame. This card can hit the field immediately at least 3,000 attack should you only have Eye of Timaeus in the graves, but I've had games where it hit at least 5,000 attack points. It also can replace itself with the Dark Magician after being destroyed. 2 Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight as creature removal. This is one of my favorite cards from Dragons of Legend and one of the first Dark Magician Girl support cards that I saw. 1 Elder Entity Norden as a quick rank 4 summon. We can use instant fusion to get this out as well. And lastly, Dark Paladin is another Timaeus target. Being able to negate spells is incredibly effective in today's game. We have a ton of spells we can use as discard fodder for it, and the dragon buffs make it especially potent. 2 copies of Eben Illusion Magician for some rank 7 spam with Dark Magician. We can then detach one to summon another copy of their Dark Magician from either our hand or our deck. We can't target the one that we detached, however. 2 Eben High Magician to help you use some of your hand traps, and is another monster that can replace itself once it's destroyed while taking out a card on the way out. 1 Castle to shuffle away problem cards on the opponent's field. 2 number 11 Big Eyes to be some sweet steal effect on an opponent's monster. And finally, Daigusto Emerald to be a quick turn 1 Dark Magician summon using its ability to summon a normal monster. The strategy behind this deck is simple. Get Dark Magician out fast, spam some XYZ monsters, and swing for game. The deck is pretty consistent, having plenty of card draw and tutor abilities. What would you recommend for a Dark Magician deck? Do you agree with our list? Let us know in the comments. The full deck list will be in the description of this video. This Yu-Gi-Oh! Tech was meant to be a tribute to one of my favorite monsters from another game I grew up on, aside from Magic. It gives me a lot of joy to see a deck I dreamed of building as a child become a reality. This is a fun, competitively built deck that I enjoy playing with. If you enjoyed this video and like to see more, feel free to hit that like button. And with that, we will see you in the next video.